Good afternoon and welcome to Sotu episode 14. With me today, Brie Salangaras. Brie, nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Brie, we got you in to talk a little bit later about some nutrition stuff, but first and foremost, you're a Southern Suburbs rugby player, is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. How's the season going for you guys?
Yeah, pretty good. We always struggle to get girls to training, but when we do, we're always enjoying it, so it's good.
Story of everybody has, isn't it? Trying to get people out to training, particularly this time of year. Cold, rainy.
No,
even
I'm the worst offender.
I've heard so. I've heard so. You're a bit of a visitor, I'd say, at South more than a regular. Is that right?
Correct.
Oh, that's all right. No wrong. Well, we'll find out how you guys are doing in the league anyway. Let's have a look at the ladders. We'll bring in the ladders. So the ladders will slide in here. It's wonderful the stuff these guys do with the I forget what they're called. What are they called? Graphics. That's the one. Thanks for the help. Thanks for the help. Pyrotechnics. If we can get some pyrotechnics this week, that'd be great. Thanks, guys. So we start with the under 12s. Not too much change there. Old Collegians, Brighton and Onkers taking up the top 3 spots with only 1 point in it. So really exciting there in the under 12s. Big fight out as we go into the last 4 weeks. So Old Collegians on top there. Under 14s ladder, Brighton up top. So the Brighton Juniors really strong this season. We'll see the near the top in most of these competitions. The under 14 ladder, Brighton, Burnside and Barossa in the top end there. Brighton coming away with 50 points from 10 games. So they got bonus point wins in all of their games. Really, really strong side there. The Brighton under 14s.
How much do they need to win by to get a bonus point?
Yeah. Oh dear. 4 tries. You have to score 4 tries to get a bonus point.
Awesome.
And then obviously 4 points for a win. Then you get nothing for a loss, 2 points for a draw, and then if you lose within 7, then you get a bonus point as well. So you can lose and still get 2 points out of the game because you've scored 4 tries and you've lost by less than 7.
Okay.
So
Learning things every day.
That's it. So even if you're behind in a game, really important to keep pushing to score tries and whatever, so that you can make sure you're getting points on the table. Particularly when the tables are this close, every point's going to count. Cool. The under 16s are the under 16s competition where we love this year because it's back and forth, it's up and down. Everybody's having a crack and anything's possible on any given day. Brighton up top there with Onkaparinga, followed by Old Collegians and then Burnside, in fact, all the way down to 5th place, Barossa, all pushing hard there within very few points of each other. So very exciting there in the 16s. So it should be a good game this weekend again for them. Under 18s, Brighton at the top as well. So Barossa chasing them hard though. With Souths, they're in 3rd. Souths under 18s there you go. Souths under 18s have had a few big upsets actually in the last few weeks. So they're looking really good and really strong. So that'll be a good game this weekend to go and have a look at. Third grade actually, if you have a look at that table, Onkaparinga and Old Coles on the same points at the top. Followed very closely by Brighton. So those 3 teams really fighting it out there for that one. The women's ladder. I see Souths in 2nd there. Doing very well. How many games have you played in this year?
I think about 3. We've had so many forfeits.
Yeah, there's been a few girls.
Which it's not great for our points if we get forfeits. We don't get the chance to earn more.
Well, you do get the 5. You get the 5 points because you get the bonus point anyway for the 4 tries. So you get that.
We could win more.
You're for and against is hurting because of that. I'll give you that. It is unfortunate with a growing competition that we have. That not all teams can always field sides every week, but hopefully they're all constantly growing and learning and getting better. As you see there, South's in 2nd though. You guys are pretty close. Adelaide Uni. Do you play at Uni in the next couple of weeks before finals?
We do. Yeah, I think I get to play. Yeah, I think I get to play when we play Uni.
That's exciting. So that'll be a cracker.
Yeah, it'll be a good game.
Awesome. So that, in fact, looking at this table, that could decide who goes 1 and 2 going into finals. So we'll have to look out for that one, see when that one's coming. Reserve grade, Old Coles top of the reserve grade ladder, putting a bit of breathing space between them and Brighton at the moment, as you can see. And then that sort of second, third, fourth, fifth are all very, very close in there within sort of 10 or so points of each other, which is pretty cool. And then the Cooper's Premier Grade ladder, with Brighton at the top at the moment on 46. Burnside just 1 point behind, Old Cols 1 point behind them, Onkaparinga 1 point behind them. So those
Close.
top four, yeah, really, really, really tight. Souths, after that big win over Burnside, have had a couple of quiet weeks, but that's all right. Expecting them to come back again as well.
Things to come.
That's it. And then obviously the bottom five here all fighting to get a place up in that top five for the Premiership opportunity to play in the Premiership finals. Who's your pick for Premier winners?
Oh, listen, I can't not back my club.
Put you on the spot there, isn't it?
I can't not back my
Now
club.
vote with your head and not with your heart.
No.
No, all right.
Oh, no.
Fair enough. Nothing wrong.
South's all the way.
All right, okay. I won't argue.
You got this, boys.
There we go. We'll see how that one goes. So, Caleb and the boys looking to put up a big fight. They've had a great season so far, so hopefully they can push that through to the line and really make a big fight going forward to the end there. Right, so Brie's come to join us today. The reason we got you in, Brie, was to talk about some nutrition.
Yes.
So what is it that you do in your day-to-day work life?
Oh gosh, lots of things. So I work with an AFL team.
Yes.
I'm there pretty much most days of the week. When I'm in Adelaide.
Are you allowed to tell us which AFL team?
Yes, Adelaide Football Club.
Oh, yeah, so you're gonna put half of our listeners offside, but that's all right.
That's okay.
So Go Crows, is it?
Go Crows.
Go Crows, all right, cool. So you're with the Crows how many days a week?
It just depends on our footy schedule.
Too many days a week. Yeah, that sounds like working in sport, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. So typically I'll be doing body composition with our players. I feed them. If we go away, I plan all our menus that we have with the hotels that we have. I'll do things like one-on-ones, sitting down, doing meal plans. Depends on their goals, depends on what time of the year it is and what we're doing. What else would we do?
So interesting that you say you do a lot of their meal plans or whatever. How much of their day-to-day do you have control of?
Well, during pre-season is probably the most time we have with them.
All right.
So we'll have them from breakfast, which we supply. We have all the way through to sort of, we give them take-home dinner packs, but the reality is that because they expend so much energy, they take those dinner packs and they eat them for afternoon tea. So, pretty much during pre-season we've got them Monday to Friday, and then they usually cook dinners at home for themselves, and then on weekends they do what they got to do for themselves.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, Brie, we do have some questions from Ask Roosa. We've got the hashtag, come on, there we go, hashtag Ask Roosa, where everybody can send in their questions. So on a Monday, obviously we put up that you were coming in, which was yesterday because we're filming on a Tuesday, but then it comes out on Friday. So everybody gets to ask some questions of you as you come in. So I got a few questions here for you from the community, so we're going to answer those. So Jerome Gucci asks, what's the best and quickest way to cut fat from foods?
I guess you need to look at the foods that you're eating firstly. So typically you've got the option to go low fat if you would like to. Otherwise, you can be doing things like avoiding fried foods, any foods that contain excessive amounts of fats, like your baked goods that you buy from the supermarket, cutting your fat off all of your animal-based products, so meat. So cutting it off before you cook it, strip the skin off the chicken. Is it
not the same? So if I take my rump steak, right, which has got that great bit of fat around the outside, and I put that on the fire, okay, and as it's cooking, the fat kind of sizzles away. Does that count as taking the fat off, or is that a? Well,
if your goal is to go lower fat, as Jerome's is, then yes, cutting the fat off would be ideal, because as you're cooking it, that meat is essentially cooking in fat and absorbing some of that fat. So you'd want to cut the fat off before you cook it. Ideally, cook it with a healthy cooking method. So grill, bake, boil, steam. Barbecue's a great option too.
Is it? That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over a fire, better than on those weird Australian gas barbecue pan things. You guys basically just fry stuff, don't you? When you barbecue.
No, yeah, yes, and yeah.
It's just like
use
a big
the grill.
frying pan.
Use the grill, and then the fat can drip down.
So the grill's a better option.
Yes,
okay.
Definitely.
Cool. Awesome.
Pan frying.
Who doesn't love something pan-fried? You got every now and again. You got every now and again. Or what are those? The deep fried. Drop the schnitty in the deep fry. Who gets that? You see? Just.
Do you know, actually, on another note, what I did try on the weekend, but not the weekend, last weekend, was halloumi chips.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Deep fried cheese. It's deep fried cheese.
Yeah. How good is that? Why is this news
It is
to
so
you?
strange.
Aren't you Greek?
Yeah, I
Isn't
love
this
halloumi.
how is deep fried halloumi a new thing to you?
We don't deep fry it.
Oh, so good. So, although a healthier way, I do slice it up, chuck it on the non-stick pan, and fry it that way, and
Lemon.
only way to do a Saturday breakfast. Next question. Angus Shave says hi. So.
Hey Angus.
Angus, how are you, mate? I hope you're enjoying it. If there was something that was supposed to come after that, shoot it back to us. We'll do it next week, Angus. Right. Pilco Jr. Should diet still be a focus for amateur level athletes?
Yeah, definitely. When you're younger, you basically lay all the foundations for when you get older and become, if you want aspiring to become an elite athlete. It's really good to start practicing those behaviours from a young age. You also find that athletes that are in a training program from a young age develop better and quicker than those that start at an older age. So why wouldn't you, if you're trying to gain muscle mass, start when you're young and you've got the ability to train, you've got the time to spend eating well and training hard, that will essentially, as you get older, be one of the best things you can possibly do.
Awesome. On that, actually, I'm gonna just throw that in, and I did ask Brie to come in and do some work with our academy. So those of you out there who don't know, we run an academy for our talented players in South Australia, and working with them obviously on creating those good habits.
Yeah.
But as we say, everybody who's out there should be starting from as young as possible.
It doesn't matter what age you're at either, because I mean, if you're not fueling your body right, you're not going to get through a rugby game or a rugby training. So it's the age is irrelevant, really. We want to all be doing the right thing. It doesn't matter how young you are.
Fair enough. I don't like the way you looked at me when you said that, but that's all right. I had a healthy breakfast today, so we're good to go.
Dude, I saw that.
It may have only been because Brie was coming in, but that's okay. What is the name again? We can skip that next one from Pilco Jr. Rocco Barocco Big Easy.
Wait, hang on. Don't skip it.
Yeah, I got this one.
Oh.
Pilco Jr., how old is Jason?
Yeah, we've covered that in previous episodes. Thank you, Pilco. So we'll get there. We don't use the O word at all. Right. So Rocco Barocco. So Alex Rockabaro, that is. Do you know Alex?
I'm not sure.
Alex plays for Old Coals. Asking for a friend. How many beers should one drink the night before a game?
Ideally, no beers to start with.
All right. So step one is we don't want to. Is that so? That's a dehydration issue, is it?
Yeah. Well, the night before is the time where you're trying to prepare for a game, whether it is your mental preparation or your physical preparation. The night before, you should be trying to do all the right things. So sitting down, having a decent meal with a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, and really focusing on hydration. Mm-hmm. Hydration, going into a game hydrated is one of the best things that you can possibly do, because they've done these studies that basically say once you're thirsty, you're already 2% dehydrated, which can be about a 20% decrease in performance.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
How easy is it to be hydrated and maybe just have one alcohol-free day?
Because when you said 2% dehydrated, I was like, what's that? It's like, that's nothing. So that actually makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and so starting the night before, making sure that you're waking up the next morning relatively hydrated, then drinking fluids all the way into that game is really important. And then the beers are probably just going to make that a little bit harder. All
right, so no beers on a Friday, Willa. Stay away from those. And but then now I'm gonna move away. We've got a couple more questions here, but I'm gonna carry on that one. Beers after the game. Now I know there's been a couple of studies that have come out recently around sort of light beers and they help hydrate and they blah 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 all this kind, but you never know what to believe when you're seeing things on the internet and something pops up on Facebook. Yeah. So tell us what are your thoughts? What's the real stuff?
Well, the recommendation is that you wouldn't have more than 2 beers. Some of the studies that have been shown basically alter the alcohol content of the beer. They've altered the carbohydrate content of the beer, and they've done studies to measure your rate of protein synthesis after consuming those beverages. Protein synthesis is basically your ability to recover or how quickly your muscles are repairing. So any more than 2 beers will actually decrease your protein synthesis. And so therefore you should be trying to, if possible, limit the amount of beers post-game. And do some other things as well.
As good sports clubs, all our clubs should be practicing the no alcohol policy and responsible drinking of alcohol and all that kind of stuff. So 2 beers should be more than easy for everybody to be able to have, and still obviously be able to drive home and all that kind of stuff. With the Crows, post game, do they? I mean, after a big win, I would imagine. It's part of Australian culture, really, isn't it? So the boys have a beer. Are they allowed to? Do you allow them to have a beer after game, and how does that work?
It depends on a lot of things. So sometimes we can have a 5-day, 6-day, 7-day turnaround, up to a 12-day turnaround. So if it's all about recovery for them, because they've got to be able to get up and go again the next day and go to a recovery session, and the following day they've got to go to another football session. So they've got to be able to continue to train every single day. So the recovery is a huge component for them. So it depends on whether or not we're playing relatively soon after that win as to whether or not they are allowed to have a couple of bevies. But the reality is most of them are pretty sensible 99% of the time, and they save it for the off season because they're there to win. So
fair enough, they're earning a lot of money for it and what have you. But then also, I mean, we're maybe not talking about professional athletes here, but we are talking about players who have got to get, a lot of us in the community do physical work. So guys have got to get back to work and recover properly so that they don't pick up injury and lose their work. So obviously something else to think about on that point.
Let me ask you, Jason.
Yes.
How do you feel after a game, after you've had a few beers the next day, as opposed to how you feel if you haven't had any the next day?
Actually, remarkably sprightly after I haven't had any. No, you're right. I do. Although I have to say, I'm a big fan of chalky milk after a game.
Me too.
I love a chalky milk after a game, so I'll pick one up before the game and it'll just be in my bag ready to go for straight away afterwards. I find it makes a massive difference if I don't have that before I have a beer, then it generally tends to hurt a bit more.
Do you know why we do the chalky milk post-game?
Tell us, Brie.
Well, let me tell you. Props out to Kylie Ruta for the chalky milk on the weekend. Thank you. She brought me one. So basically, after we've played a game or trained, during exercise you tear muscle fibers, and the only way to repair those muscle fibers is to ingest protein. So protein comes from all your meat, eggs, tofu, legumes for our vegetarians out there. All your dairy, so milk, including your flavoured milk. The reason why flavoured milk is a great alternative to things like supplements is because one of those 600 ml chalky milks will have about 19 grams of protein in it. And we're trying to hit about 20 grams of protein for optimum recovery. It's also got carbs in it, it's very high carbs, so the ability for you to replenish your energy that you've just burnt is high. And we also would use it during things like, say you had a sevens tournament or something like that. After you've had a couple of games, having a bit of a flavoured milk is a really good quick energy hit, gives you a little bit of protein for the recovery, and it often sits quite well in the tummy because you're not drinking excessive amounts. It's quite light. So protein is the number one thing that we're looking at from that chalky milk that you have, and that will help speed up that recovery process.
Awesome. So there you go. There's a more scientific response to all those guys. We had a state rep, which we've released a video about that earlier this week, a state rep program over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And after each their game, they get a cup of chocolate milk and a half a banana to just help them recover for the next game or whatnot. So there you go. Now you know why you're getting all that stuff. Cool. There was something else that I'd ask you there, but it doesn't really matter. What should I eat to prepare for a game? So this is pre-game preparation. What's our ideal?
Ideal? Well, it's a funny one. So typically in the past, everyone recommends that the night before you need to have a really high carb meal. The reality is with most sports, the day before a game, you're not actually expending very much energy unless you're a tradie or in an active job. So most people, especially younger athletes, can typically get away with just having their regular intake. So get up in the day before and have a good cereal for brekkie, have a sandwich for lunch, have maybe a little bowl of pasta or some meat and veggies for dinner, and then in between that have snacks like fruit, muesli bars, yogurt as well. The next morning, get up, make sure you have a decent breakfast, don't skip brekkie. And it depends on the time that you're playing. So some of our younger athletes, they might have to get up a little bit earlier just to have that brekkie because they're playing earlier in the morning, whereas our older athletes or the more mature grades, they're going to be playing later.
I like the fact that you tried at least to avoid the O word. Thank you so much, Brie. Yeah.
Later in the day, and I mean playing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's just as important to get up and eat those regular small frequent meals leading into the competition. Typically with AFL players, which is a very similar sort of demographic to rugby, in that we would get up in the morning, we would have brekkie, so whether it's eggs on toast or cereal. Mid-morning they might go out and grab a coffee or something like that. Lunch, we always do things from pasta all the way through to sandwiches. Anything with a little bit of carbohydrate is good, so utilising your rice, utilising bread for your sangers, those sort of things. Making a smoothie, if you find that you get out in the field and you can't actually stomach having food in your gut, trying to choose light things like rice crackers, smoothies are really good, or a little bit of fruit juice potentially. What else could we use? We sometimes use popcorn, fruit, muesli bars.
Popcorn's great.
Yeah.
Big popcorn.
It's good because it's got the salt in it.
Oh, so
get
good,
you
isn't it?
hydrated.
Question for you though. You said they'll pop up for a coffee. Do you have to then plan around rehydrating after that, or is one coffee not too much of an issue?
It depends on the individual. So if you drink coffee regularly, it shouldn't actually affect your output of urine. So that's what I'm saying, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a bit of a myth around if you drink excessive amounts of coffee, you'll need to pee more. They've actually shown now that it's not necessarily a diuretic.
Okay.
Believe it or not, it's just the fluid that you're actually consuming within the coffee. So
That's
if you were to
pretty
drink a
bad,
glass of water in the same portion as you had that coffee, you'd probably need to go to the toilet just at the same time.
That's fair enough.
We use coffee purely from the fact that they've got everything else right in their intake, and then we use stimulants like caffeine to help give them. It helps with your rate of perceived exertion, your concentration, your decision-making ability,
Absolutely.
those sort of
Gets
things.
you alert to a certain point though, doesn't it? I mean, if you're having 10 coffees, that might push you past your limit.
Correct. So the upper limit that we recommend for athletes is no more than 200 milligrams leading into a competition, and that has about a window of about 4 to 6 hours. Just depends on, like, different coffees can have anywhere from 80 to 150 milligrams of caffeine. So we sort of say if you're having, and our players at elite level will use a few stimulants and things like that, legal obviously. But we will say try and limit it to 1 to 2 coffees, and if you plan on having any of those stimulants, we've got a counter in that caffeine that you've had in the coffee into whatever else we're taking.
All right, so they're actually still able to concentrate when they get on the field.
Otherwise your performance goes down. If you have
Absolutely.
any more than that, you've got this beautiful peak, and then all of a sudden you have too much caffeine, it's just like opposite effect.
Which, a lot of rugby players look at and they go, we'll smash out a whole lot of pre-workout and do Red Bulls and Monsters and whatnot. And they hit the field, and although they're running around and doing a lot of mileage, decision-making process, concentrations all over the place, giving away a lot of penalties and not actually being particularly useful.
100%. And I think the main thing, like, we don't use stimulants with any of our younger players. They've got to get the basics right first. So fueling right leading into and during a game is way more beneficial than actually taking stimulants of some sort. So I don't know if I'm going too far with this, but like during a game, you basically want to be making sure that you're having, after every 45 minutes to an hour of exercise, about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate. So I don't know in the past if you've ever had oranges when you're little growing up. One orange...
Half-time snakes or whatever, yeah?
Yeah. So one orange has 15 grams of carbs. And no one's going to eat an entire orange because you'd need to eat a minimum of 2 oranges for every hour of exercise that you're doing. So the reality is that that's why we have things like snakes or sports drinks. So like 4 to 6 lollies will have 15 grams of carbs.
Oh, right.
So you can see like at that half time sort of break, we actually really need to be looking at putting fuel back in the body, or having things like a sports drink like Gatorade or Powerade. It's not if I'm allowed to use those labels. They've brainwashed me from AFL.
That's fair enough,
but
yeah.
sports drinks with carbs in them is probably the main thing you'd want to be looking at.
So we're talking balanced diet, small amount of carbs, hydration, and
then stimulants.
And tiny little bit of stimulants. Not a lot. And make sure they're legal. Just on that, on supplements, and I'm not a big fan of supplements. The work that I've done around supplements and schools and whatever have you in the past, and working with a program called Shark Smart Schools of Excellence in South Africa under the Sharks, was those dangers of what's in those sports supplements, that they don't tell you what's in them, and particularly for developing young athletes, not only, adults too, I suppose, is the health risks that comes with just putting supplements in your body off the counter, or taking it from someone in a supplement store who said, this is great, it does this, it does that for you, without knowing exactly what's going into your body, or even with reading the label, it's not always on there, or 100%. They're using a different name, and putting yourself in those dangers. So really important to understand what you're putting in your body and what you're fueling your body with.
They actually did a study in 2015 that showed that 1 in 5 Australian supplements had a banned substance in it. 1 in 5 is huge. And I think as well, I know a lot of younger athletes are always wanting, especially at rugby, wanting to put on size. But the best thing you can possibly do is be doing that through food. And it's so much easier to do it through food. And it tastes so much better to do it through
so much
food.
better, doesn't it? I mean, that's why we have taste buds at the end of the day, so we can enjoy it. I haven't found a supplement ever that I particularly enjoyed tasting. But, anyway, I suppose we'll find out. So that was preparation for a game. Post-game recovery stuff. I mean, we touched on the chalky milks.
Yeah.
Outside of that, anything else other than just a balanced diet or whatever that we could be looking at a sneaky quick fix?
Yeah, so main thing is number one, protein. So a minimum of 20 grams of protein. That's not the weight of the food, that's the amount of protein in the food. So as easy as having 100 grams of meat has about 25 to 30 grams of protein in it. So you don't have to do a lot of work, and a lot of people are really keen to sort of overdo it with the protein all the time. But the reality is your flavoured milks are pretty good. Meat products, even having something like a tin of tuna that's got 25 to 30 grams of protein in it. Just making sure you hit those protein requirements. And then looking at replenishing, so things like ingesting some carbohydrate, and also making sure that you get the fluids back in that you've just sweated out during that game.
Absolutely.
Especially younger athletes, I find, typically forget to drink post competition. So they've gone out there, they've played their game, great, but then they start to get really, really tired in the few hours afterwards because they haven't refueled the body, carbs and fluid.
Awesome.
Yep.
As a South African, big fan of biltong. You know biltong?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jerky.
Don't even. It is different to jerky. Biltong. All right. So dried, spiced, and salted meat.
Who was our younger athlete that was trying to cut fat from their diet? Don't eat too much biltong.
Oh, no, biltong. You get the one without the fat on it. Just the meat. Oh, it's so good. So I got some in the office. We can have some after. But it's so good. Yeah, so that's my go-to is the chalky milk and some biltong after a game. Oh, change your life. Right. Is it a
diet
myth?
tips by Jason?
I'm just making sure it's okay. Right. Is it a myth? I need 300 grams of protein per day.
Depends on your weight. So nutrition's really individualized. So how much do you weigh?
Oh.
Let's say you're 100 gram athlete to make my math easy.
100 kilogram.
100 kilograms.
All right, I just lost a few. That was good. Right, so we're going to go. Here we go.
So
100 kilos.
You're 100 kilos. I'd be looking at anywhere from about 150 to 200 grams maximum a day.
Okay.
Of protein.
All right, so sort of like 2 grams protein per kg.
That's the maximum amount. And
okay.
like if if you're not doing a decent strength training program, there's actually no point in us putting in excessive amounts of protein. Sorry.
All right. Yeah.
So you always need to have a good strength training program, complemented by the nutrition. The two go hand in hand. You can't, and it depends again on whatever this individual's goals are. Your goals, maybe you're trying to gain some lean mass. You actually can't do that without having the strength training component as well. And then there's so many other things that go into play with that, but at the same time, if you are trying to gain, and again, I just say this purely because a lot of younger athletes are trying to gain size, you have to have an energy surplus, so a decent amount of carbs on board as well to make the muscles actually grow in size. So protein only does recovery until you add carbohydrate to it, then it will help make the muscles grow bigger.
Right.
So so it is really individualized. I guess that 200 grams of protein would be the maximum I would aim for, but it's so easy to meet your protein requirements. So if you were to look at having breakfast, having a bowl of cereal with sort of some milk on it, you'd probably hit around the 15 grams of protein there.
Already.
All
right.
You have, let's say...
So my breakfast this morning, I had a bowl of muesli. I'm going to tip it this way so we don't see my leftovers. So a bowl of muesli, throw in a cup of milk and a cup of yogurt. I'm probably
awesome.
already
so you're
looking
at 20 grams of protein minimum.
Already halfway there, yeah.
And then you look at, like I said before, with meat. So say you're having lunch and you've got leftover stir fry or something like that, and you've got 200 grams of meat within that. That's already another 60 grams of protein. And then maybe add rice to that, so you're getting another few grams of protein on however much rice you have. So you're never going to not meet your protein requirements unless you're cutting out food groups. So people with special dietary requirements, vegan, vegetarian,
vegans,
they have to work at meeting their protein requirements, and they have to be really diligent in and around that. So it really does depend on the individual and what their goals are of how much protein they actually need. But
awesome.
That's why you go see a dietitian.
300 is massively excessive, obviously. So
a huge amount. You
right.
just pee out the rest of it. So again, like with on the supplement side of things, people taking all these fancy supplements, all they're doing is creating really expensive urine. You often just pee out all the protein you don't need, and
there you go.
That's it.
Pee in a cup and sell it.
I'm not drinking it.
Don't do that. We'll go one more question here, I think, and it's cramps. So I know a lot of players struggle with cramps. Obviously, if they were having a balanced diet and they were hydrating properly, they would likely not end up with them. But any tips on how to stop cramps, or things to have before you play so you're not going to have them, or things to have when you're having cramps to help out?
So cramps. There's a few things that have been shown to help with cramps, or the reasons why cramps are occurring. Number one, and not in any specific order, just looking at hydration.
Mm-hmm.
So they think that when you're dehydrated, you're more inclined to get a cramp. Cramps, just keep in mind, always typically occur towards the end of a competition when it's really hot. So you're more inclined to be dehydrated, you've sweated a fair bit. Also looking at making sure you're fueling right throughout the exercise, to making sure you're not getting too fatigued. So they think neuromuscular fatigue or being unfit or not having enough fuel may be the cause. So think about a rugby preseason. Often you find it's summer, it's hot, you're not as fit as you once were, and more inclined to get cramps during those sessions where you're doing a lot of cardio.
We had this year in the beach fives a fair number of cramps. I won't say who was cramping, but yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Yeah, a lot of fun, wasn't it?
So
out on the beach, but tough, hard work. Anyway, so
the other one is electrolytes. So when you sweat out your sodium, predominantly potassium, magnesium. So that's basically why we have sports drinks. Sports drinks have electrolytes in them, so they help prevent the cramp. They also have carbohydrate, they're also fluid, so they're ticking off most of those boxes besides the fact that you might just be unfit. So once the fitness is there, having those sort of products is really useful just from a preventing cramps.
And when we're talking sports drinks, really important to understand the difference between sports and energy drinks.
Correct.
So sports drinks we're talking about?
Things like Gatorade, Powerade, Staminade, all your aids.
Maximus. Maximus. So we're not talking about things like your Red Bulls, your Monsters, your Rock Stars, all that kind of stuff.
And it is important to know as well that sports drinks should never be drunk unless you're playing sport. there's no other purpose or time for having a sports drink unless you're physically expending the energy, and it's during that competition period.
Fantastic. Brie, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you in here today, answering all of our questions, helping out. Hopefully you guys in the community got a lot from it. Remember anything that happens out there in the community. So at Souths, when you're out at Souths this weekend or whatever, if you see something cool, take a picture, take a video, put out hashtag Roosa Community. Hashtag Roosa Community. Let us know what's happening out there. Other than that, again, Brie, infinitely better to be here talking nutrition with you than having to listen to Pete. And so I really appreciate you coming in. Have a great week, everybody. Good luck with everything, and we'll see you next week.
Go Souths!